Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time on Doctor Who Classic, we started our rewatch of The Web of Fear. What all happened on those?
Well, after the previous episode, the last thing, of course, was the villain Salamander being blown out into the space-time continuum. They managed to get the door closed. And then the TARDIS is stopped in space by some gigantic web. Ultimately, it's brought down. They land in the London Underground, only to find out that the Yeti are back. Although, if I recall, we haven't seen or heard the Great Intelligence yet.
Well, at the very least, they suspect the intelligence.
Yeah. But now the Yeti have this thing where they're coating stuff in what appears to be spider webs.
Yeah.
And the Doctor disappears for an episode because he was in a tunnel that was supposed to be blown up, but he was just, basically out of action, taking a week off. We introduce Stuart Lethbridge.
Lethbridge Stewart. Yeah.
And brought back Professor Travers and now his daughter.
Yes.
And a whole bunch of wonderful character actors playing the soldiers with some really great accents.
Yeah. And we also have Chorley, the journalist.
Oh, yes, and the slimy journalist Chorley.
Yeah. And actually, I remember someone asked me if we actually remembered who the traitor was, and I said, for the life of us, we can't remember. And so we suspect Chorley, but we honestly don't remember who the actual traitor is. So I think that'll be a bit more... I think there's a bit more mystery going into it. I think Chorley is still a red herring. Which is hilarious that we've already seen this episode before, and we don't remember it,
Well,
really.
we took such a quick tour. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, the Curse of Peladon. The main thing I remember from that is the, gigantic gherkin.
Yeah, right. I mean, that was also when we were building up to the 50th anniversary. Yeah. So I think we did, The Edge of Destruction, and then The Web of Fear, and then it was Peladon, and...
Well, somewhere in there was Tomb of the Cybermen.
Well, that was the first one we did 2 years ago. But this Web of Fear was when we... Tomb of the Cybermen was our first run-through of all the Doctors, and then we went back to do another run-through of all the Doctors, and that's where we got the Web of Fear.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So, it was on our second run of the second Doctor, basically, before the 50th anniversary. So, it was a lot. And, of course, we're always having to take in different Doctors on different weeks, so... it's a little hard to remember who was the traitor in the Web of Fear. Yeah. So, but presumably we will figure that out once we watch the last 3 episodes.
But we also did comment that the sets of the Underground were really cool, and we've speculated that it was basically just kind of one large section which they then filmed from different angles.
Right.
And the underground area where the staff room and all the other things, that did feel very claustrophobic. So, kudos to the set designers for this episode.
Yeah, I mean, it was so convincing that the City of London actually got mad that they actually did film in the London Underground, but they didn't. So, also, by the way, for this reaction, we will have a very short Q&A after this. Okay. We do not nearly have as many questions as we did for Tomb of the Cybermen. I think we have a maximum of 2 questions.
Oh.
Which is perfectly fine. I think the main reason is because when we did Tomb of the Cybermen, there were a lot of questions more just about the second Doctor in general than about that episode. So because we answered all those questions, there's not many questions to actually ask about the Web of Fear. Right. So yeah, it'll be a very brief Twitter Q&A, but maybe that's for the best. So I guess that's pretty much it. So we should go ahead and hop into the last 3 parts of the Web of Fear. I was trying to think of too many different phrases to say.
I was going to say, your math teacher would be embarrassed.
Yeah, so let's get into this.
You mean to say you could have got to the TARDIS and already taken off in it? Hey, come back, Doctor!
It's all right, Jamie. I'm not going to do anything silly.
The Doctor does lock the TARDIS, doesn't he? How could Chorley get in?
Oh, Jamie! Nip back and tell Captain Knight it's all clear up here. And get him to get a shift on. Righto, stop.
Glad we have subtitles for that one.
I have a craft that travels in time and space.
Oh, come now, Doctor. You can't express...
Craft of yours, this time-space craft. Could you get us out of here?
Oh, yes.
But it's at Covent Garden.
What does it look like?
It's a police box. Oh, really, Colonel?
So, if we could rescue that craft, you could take us out.
Yes.
Therefore, I do not intend leaving any escape route unexplored, however screwy you may think it.
Oh, surely, Colonel.
Let's get on with it, shall we, Knight?
Don't call me Shirley.
I like that even though he does obviously doubt all this stuff, he will listen to everything that needs to be said.
And when we get in the tunnels, don't you try to skive off, because if you do, I'll have you for breakfast. You understand?
Trolley's ready, still.
Right, come on.
You know, it might help if Evan's face wasn't like... I just want to like readjust it.
Stop!
I wonder if that was that angel hair that they put on Christmas trees.
Maybe.
Find a way out. Split up.
It'd be funny if that was the old junkyard.
No. Well, I thought this music was specifically for the Cybermen. I guess it's just for any sort of big attack on the walking enemies.
Over the top, all of you!
Well, they did get one of them in the eyes.
Yeah. I thought they already knew that if you shot them in the eyes, that would
Yeah.
cause them to...
Well, at least grenades seem to work.
For heaven's sake, hurry up.
I need just one more component. I'll look through here.
yes, the old turntable. We still have one somewhere.
Well, they're not totally out of date, according to the hipsters. Good job, Doctor.
How long can you stare with your eyes wide open,
No.
Dr. Travers?
Needs to be a nice long shot on that. Man, we lost a lot of people in that episode.
Yeah.
Now, I can't remember. I feel like I remember losing Arnold and be like, oh man, I really like that character. But then about 5 seconds later, I was like, wait, I remembered that, but do I remember him coming back? Like, he's not actually dead.
I think Staff Arnold got through.
Yeah. So, I think that was... I'm actually remembering, like, multiple different things about it. Like, oh, man. Because I do like him.
Yeah.
So... Oh.
Well, again, very fast pace.
Yeah.
There's no padding. This is, so far, obviously, a going to need to be a six-parter to wind it all up.
Yeah.
So, again, it is so much better than the original. Where they were up in the mountains in Tibet there.
I mean, this one... Well, it feels like maybe a bit more of a bigger scale because it is in London. You have so many more characters in the army and stuff. So it honestly feels like... It almost feels like a backdoor pilot for, like, a show about UNIT, basically. Like, I could... Granted, most of them have died now, but, like, I could see a lot of them in their own show, which I guess that must have been the thought process in the Third Doctor. Like, well, you know, if we're going to put him on Earth, let's put him with the Brigadier.
Yeah.
So, I assume the newly promoted Brigadier, because he's still only a colonel at this point.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know.
Now, that's really odd because not having seen much of the Third Doctor, we assume then that Pertwee's tenure takes place after this. And yet, do they ever reference the Yeti invasion and the Great Intelligence?
I don't know. I would assume so.
That'll be interesting to see.
Yeah. Because especially, so I guess, this is supposed to be the 60s. I think they do say that the Doctor stayed with UNIT in the 70s specifically. So...
We must work out a plan.
Well, you do what you want. I'm going.
Or not.
Why don't we just let it happen? Then we can all go home.
Simple solution from a simple mind.
Leastways, it's a chance.
But it's not you that's taking the risk, is it?
I reckon he ought to give himself up now.
Evans, when I want your opinion, I'll ask for it.
It's all right, Evans.
When I want your opinion, I'll give it to you.
The answer I will give. I know why it's not working.
Success! It's going on.
Oh, that's marvellous.
Needs a good whack.
I'm sorry being so long. This is such
Well, we know that your control box can stop a Yeti. Now then, if I can reprogram this sphere to obey our verbal commands...
Yes, but can we do it? I mean, in the time.
How long have we got?
12 minutes.
It's been a very long 20 minutes.
What happened, sir? Shh, give me a moment.
Well, he is alive.
So the intelligence is all-knowing, and yet it didn't know that Arnold was still there?
I guess. Well, like most enemies, the intelligence doesn't have great peripheral vision.
You must be joking. Go near one of them things. I may
You must
be
be
stupid,
daft.
but I'm not daft.
There it is. Can't they see his legs from underneath it?
Evans, come out from behind that board.
With my reprogrammed sphere and your control box, we should be able to work him over quite a distance. And put your arm down. Now we got a chance, Anne. Come on. Oh, I mustn't forget him. Come on, Fred, out the double.
Fred the Yeti.
Alright. And that's part 5.
Now, because of the logistics of that slowed down a little bit, but still doesn't take away from the overall story.
Yeah. Yeah, still pretty good. Still pretty good all around.
And again, I realize I'm going to reignite the linguistic storm here again, but
Oh boy.
same sentence, use the word hand and what in the United States would be command, but it was hand and command. It's the same thing with you can do it, and he says, no, I can't. Now, that's the same word. How can it be you can do it, and he says, no, I can't do it?
Yeah. We will accept all of your angry comments about this in the comment section below, where you can tell us that we're wrong because you invented the language. So, anywho.
Sorry about that.
You're not sorry. You're not sorry, you enjoy it.
And I'm seriously, I'm not criticizing. I'm just pointing out that English is one of the most inconsistent and irregular languages in the entire history of the world.
Yeah.
And yet, it is becoming the dominant speech. Right? People, and that's partially because of, first of all, the British Empire, and then now the American Empire, as it were. But again, there are so many other languages that are so regular and so much simpler to use, and yet because of the dominance of the British culture and the American culture, English language, again, this is hodgepodge, is becoming the dominant language on the planet.
Yeah. Which, I mean, is slightly good for Americans because they are not going to be bothered to try to learn another language.
Oh, yes, I'm sadly aware of that.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm the same way. I took Spanish for 6 years. Took it in high school, took it in college. And, I mean, seriously, I can listen to Spanish speakers if they speak slowly. In fact, I've had a couple of times where I had to speak to someone who does not speak English. And the first thing I have to say is, más despacio, por favor, means slower, please. Because I can semi-translate it when they talk slowly. But I like to, sometimes I try to watch the Spanish language news, and it's like every 10th word I can pick up. It goes too fast. My brain simply will not translate it that quickly.
I want to say I'm kind of like that with French. I only took a year of French, but I mean, even when I was taking French, I could barely get French at a slow speed. So I remember my final exam we were like in groups and we had just a conversation. And when it was all done, yeah, I think I made a decent grade on it. But my teacher said, "Alex, you only really said basic sentences." And I said, "I know. Did I make a good grade? I'm ready to leave." So I knew what I was doing. I knew I couldn't speak French very well.
Well, I won't tell the whole story, but the only time I've ever actually had to use complete Spanish was freshman in college back in 1969. My roommate at the University of Arizona had gone down to the border town of Nogales, and we got a call at the dorm in the middle of the night that he was arrested for, well, let's just say drinking too much cerveza and then not being able to find a private restroom. He did so in an alley and got caught by the police, and I had to go down and bail him out. And of course, now, I am absolutely certain that everyone in Nogales in Mexico speaks English because it is a border town. But boy, when I went down there, it's like, no hablo inglés. And it's, okay, so I'm going to... The only time, again, the first thing I ever remember saying to a Spanish person in Spanish was, ¿Dónde está la cárcel? Which means, where is the jail? And so they took me down to the jail, and I bailed the kid out, and we got out of there. I never went back. I mean, I'm sure Nogales is a wonderful town, but I didn't want to take a chance.
Yeah. It's just... That is definitely just very difficult to... especially as, like, even if you understand the language, like, I kind of get it, but I don't get enough. And then when you do get, like, oh, I know that word, your mind hooks on that word, so you miss the next 10.
Yeah.
So
now, I have always said that I think Americans can learn foreign languages, but they literally have to start learning it, like, at ages 3 and 4. All right? When they go into pre-kindergarten or kindergarten, teach Spanish or French or Japanese or German, whatever, in elementary school, because your mind can learn it better than when you get older. Because once you are hooked in on English, in my opinion, it makes it much harder to learn another language.
Yeah. Although there are a bunch of different ways to learn languages.
Yeah.
I heard there was like one where it's like you work on it every day for 4 months, and at the end you're fluent. So I mean that's pretty insane.
Yeah.
So
but can you do that while holding down a full-time job and remaining socially active? If you're just going to immerse yourself for 4 months, I would imagine you can do that. But
yeah, I don't know. See, what we all need is the TARDIS translation. If I can sort of bring this back around.
Yes.
Since the TARDIS does translate basically everything.
Including signs, yes. We
yes,
figured that out before, too.
Yeah. And I also like, though, that even though the TARDIS can translate everything, the Doctor also speaks everything, just for added measure. Like, there will be moments where it's like, here's this, creature, and it doesn't speak any known language, so the TARDIS isn't translating it, but the Doctor understands, and then they speak English, and then they understand the Doctor's English. So, or at least we assume they're speaking English, because that's what we hear. So, it's like, I mean, it might be a bit of a random reference, but last night we watched Godzilla vs. Kong, and I guess slight spoiler alert for Godzilla vs. Kong, I guess. They bring up that Kong has actually learned sign language to communicate, and I just thought, if the Doctor was here, they would just talk to Kong, Kong would grunt, and the Doctor would be like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean. You're chained up to this boat, Godzilla's attacking, I get you, man. So,
but that's, strangely enough, that's based off of a true thing. And I think it was actually here in Oklahoma, they actually taught a gorilla to use American Sign Language. And he, no, I think it was a she, learned like 200 different words and could actually put together sentences. And was able to literally translate her feelings, like she could say when she was sad and when she was hungry and things like that. So, fascinating story. I think her name was Coco. And again, I'm hoping it was a female gorilla, but I can't really remember. It was probably 30, 40 years ago. So, home.
Yeah. Anywho. now we should get into the last episode.
Part 6.
Yes.
Must have been very difficult to see in that, walking over those rails.
Stop. Is that understood? Right. Switch off for 90 seconds, starting from now. Come on, Anne.
Man, I kind of want to keep him. He'd just be a fun little addition to the TARDIS.
London invaded, all because of my wretched curiosity.
Curiosity killed the cat, Professor.
Why not?
Yes, sounded very like desertion to me.
Desertion? Me? Oh, good heavens, no. No, I thought I'd try a single-handed and desperate attempt to rescue Professor Travers and the girl.
Oh, it was desperate, all right.
Staff Arnold.
How did the Yeti not notice him?
Well, they do not. Sidney Poitier, Rod Steiger, In the Heat of the Night, not blockbusters. They're not programmed to notice anybody missing. They're programmed just to... They kind of go into a stasis.
Yeah, that's true.
It isn't me, don't you understand? I'm not the intelligence. The intelligence is him.
Can't be.
Oh, it's too horrible. I don't believe it.
No. Merely Arnold's lifeless body in which I have conceived myself. But let us to work. Submission is essential. You must
Resistance is
understand,
futile.
Doctor, that without your complete cooperation, prepare for a great darkness to cloud your mind.
Attack now! Attack the Yeti!
Stop it! Destroy it!
It's a good thing they got the strongest Yeti.
Well, that's that then, isn't it?
You blithering Welsh imbecile! Why can't you do what you're told? The intelligence wouldn't have drained me. I would have drained the intelligence. As it is, all we got was a cross circuit.
Oh, you mean all we've done is cut off its contact with Earth? It's still out there in space somewhere, flying around?
Precisely.
Yes, I do.
It's facts, old man. By tomorrow morning, you're going to be a household word, a national figure. Yeah, I want you on my television program.
Oh, no.
And no, I want to...
Jamie,
big press
Victoria, come along. It's time to get
conference, Doctor.
Goodbye. Oh, Doctor, you come. Goodbye, Trevor. Bye.
This is essentially ending the exact same way as the Abominable Snowman.
Back to his TARDIS, I suppose. Which is the way to come and go? Don't ask me. I've completely lost my bearings.
All these tunnels look the same to me.
Come on, let's try this way. Well, it doesn't matter anyway. I mean, there's no danger, is there? Well, not from the Yeti, no, but who knows, they might suddenly start the trains again. Come on. Trains? Oh! Come on!
Alrighty. And that is the Web of Fear. Again. Okay, so... Interesting thing, the intelligence. I don't think it... And I could be completely wrong about this, but I don't think it ever comes back in classic Doctor Who. But it does come back with the 11th Doctor. Towards the 50th anniversary, they bring back the Great Intelligence. So... Now, having watched those episodes, I'm trying to work out the timeline on it, because it's very confusing. So, I think by this point, the Great Intelligence had met the 11th Doctor. Because I think he meets the 11th Doctor first, then goes back in time to the Abominable Snowman, meets the second Doctor, realizes how good the Doctor is, so wants his intelligence, but wants the intelligence of the second Doctor, not the 11th Doctor that he first met.
Okay.
But then after this, then goes to another episode with the 11th Doctor, where he eventually dies. So,
okay.
It's very confusing, and the best way to explain it would be to have you watch those episodes, but we're not going to get there for like 10 years. So,
now I do remember Jamie basically screwing it all up, but I couldn't remember what had happened. I remember the Doctor was he had some plan, but I didn't remember that he had cross-circuited and he was going to drain the Great Intelligence there.
Yeah, he was basically going to get rid of the Great Intelligence once and for all. But, again, ending like the Abominable Snowman, he's still just out there somewhere. So, and yeah, I don't think he comes back with any of the other Doctors until the 11th Doctor. And I think, actually, the only reason they brought him back for the 11th Doctor was it was the 50th anniversary... Well, not of the Web of Fear. It was around the 50th anniversary. I think they found the Web of Fear serial around that time. So they're like, oh, well, let's bring him back for a Christmas special. And then they brought him back again as sort of the season villain for one of Matt Smith's seasons. So, and he had a whole complicated plot of trying to destroy the Doctor throughout all of time. It was all sorts of weird stuff. So, a bit difficult to explain, but yeah, so now I'm just sitting here, because last time we had watched this, it was like 1 or 2 weeks before I watched his first appearance with the 11th Doctor. So now I'm sitting here trying to like piece all of these together, how they all work out. And I think actually, technically the first time he meets the 11th Doctor, it's before the Abominable Snowman, the 11th Doctor accidentally gives him like, oh yeah, well, if you would want to attack the city of London, going to the London Underground would be the best place to do it. So he accidentally tells the Great Intelligence how to do all this. So, anywho.
Anyway.
So...
Well, again, very well written, and they constantly, led us off the track as to who was, in the employ, basically, of the Great Intelligence.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. It couldn't have been Staff Arnold until he went into the Web of Fear, could it? I mean, do you think he was being controlled before that? Because that's what they were implying there at the end.
Yeah, that it was him all along. Maybe. I mean, it could be like... I don't know, because you could honestly, like... You can't really rule out any of the people that have died over the course of this episode. So it could be maybe that, the Great Intelligence had taken one or even multiple. We don't know how many it could have taken, but taken a bunch of them. But maybe they all started slowly dying. So once he was able to get Arnold, he sort of kept him, basically. Yeah. So it could be something like that. They don't fully explain that.
Yeah. But that would also explain how... Staff survived the web after he went into it.
Yeah, basically.
Because he was technically already dead.
Yeah. And it also explains, why Chorley, can stay out there so long and not get killed. The Great Intelligence is probably thinking, okay, let me leave this guy so that they suspect him more than Staff.
Intelligent move.
Yeah. I mean, it's honestly just sort of with all these traitors, it's sort of a giant game of chess.
Yeah.
And they literally have chess pieces for the Yetis, so it all works out.
But it's also that old shell game where you've got the 3 shells and then the small ball, and you just, switching it all around, and then at the end you pick up one and go, oh, I thought it was there, and it turns out it was somewhere else.
Yeah. And, I mean, and it makes sense that, it wouldn't be Chorley or Evans because they're too obvious, and especially because, Chorley, he's the slimy journalist, and then Evans is just a cartoon character. So having them as red herrings definitely works to keep suspicion off of Arnold.
Yeah.
So, let's see. Okay, so, I mean, one of the first things I wrote down is that, they take Travers. They don't fully explain why they took him. Like, I guess they used him... Obviously, the Intelligence used him to communicate and lay down the terms of why he wanted the Doctor and stuff. But he didn't... Other than that, like, did he, like, need Travers for anything else, or was it just that?
It didn't seem... they didn't say that, Travers would help him set up the lab there at the end or anything. So, again, it may just have been to take the suspicion off of Staff Arnold.
Yeah, something like that. And then also to communicate with the Doctor and also to have a hostage.
Also, the Doctor would have cared less about Staff Arnold, but he cares about Travers because of Anne.
Yeah, that's true. And then taking Victoria on top of that.
An added incentive, so to speak.
Right. I did write down, I liked, again, how, there's so many crazy things that can be said in a Doctor Who episode. And especially, when the Doctor says, like, well, I travel around in a time and space craft that is shaped like a police box. And everyone's like, all right, whatever, sure, you're crazy, man. But I do like that the Brigadier, he will listen to everything that is said, even if he doubts it, like, well, I don't know about this whole police box thing or anything like that. But if this person is saying, well, I do have a method of escape, we can't just ignore it. So
yeah, well, the other thing, of course, is, realistically speaking, here's a man who's in control of an army unit that's fighting Robot Yeti.
Yes.
And in a world where Robot Yeti exists, why can't you have a time and space machine that looks like a police call box?
Yeah, like there's Yeti and fungus about, and presumably, like, this has been going on for a while. Yeah. Like maybe a couple weeks. So at that point, the Brigadier's like, okay, there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. This guy says that it could, there's some sort of time and space machine that looks like a police box. Okay, we'll try to accept that. So, but I like that. I like that there's such a defined character for the Brigadier just right off the bat. Like, it almost does feel like they were creating him specifically because they wanted to bring him back and use him later. Yeah. So I do really like that. We had the fight on the surface, which was good. I did really like that, just going out first off, having a location shot in there too.
Yeah. But that also then brings up, again, a kind of a loose thread. We saw the Yetis being destroyed by grenades and by the bazooka. Yeah. So why wasn't that used? I mean, why didn't the army just sweep into London and get rid of all of them?
Yeah. Right. I mean, I assume maybe part of it was because of the mist that was covering London, so obviously the Yetis can go through that no problem, but humans can't. So maybe there was that sort of element of it's hard to get to the Yetis, but you're right, how did they not figure out before if you use grenades? Also, how come the army has terrible aim where if you hit around, the head or the eyes, or I would honestly assume, because there's just a tiny little flap between, that covers the sphere. You would think you could, get a couple shots in on that, although I guess they don't fully know about the spheres. But you do know about the eyes. So why is it that every soldier here has horrible aim? They're like stormtroopers.
Yeah, I noticed that they were, a lot of them were firing from the hip. And again, I would think that would have to be a shoulder shot.
Even if you don't know about that weak point, you would almost instinctively do that, I would think. Or at least, when the first 3 bullets you fire don't work, try the head. And if that doesn't work, then you go. Yeah. So, I mean, and I get it. These soldiers, they're probably used to fighting people, or maybe even, not fighting. When was the last time they were put out on active duty at this point? And so you put them against giant Yetis that have their own web guns. I get maybe some of these boys are going to be scared, but still try a bit harder to hit these things.
Now, the United Kingdom was, if I recall correctly, sending soldiers to Vietnam. And this is before the Troubles. I think that didn't start, the action in Northern Ireland didn't start until 1969. So, some of these young men would have had some combat experience, I would think.
Yeah. So it just seems like, and I get, part of that is it's a TV show. Maybe I'm looking a bit too much into it. We're just supposed to, see the menace of the Yetis, but and honestly, if you start going through them, maybe that leads to like, oh well, we can just defeat them all, and we don't really have a problem here. They're not maybe as threatening, but still, like if you just have 1 or 2, that do fall. So especially in that giant, big fight, there's a ton of them. You could get like 5. If they could have killed like 5 of them, that would have been something. Yeah. So, let's see. again, some of my other notes stem from later episodes with the Great Intelligence, which, again, it is interesting. I mean, when we first watched this, I thought it was interesting. It's like, okay, this guy, the intelligence, he wants the Doctor's intelligence. And it's interesting to have that, I don't want to say like relatively early on, because we're still in the 5th season. The Doctor has established himself as a genius by this point. But it's just interesting in hindsight that he would want the Doctor's intelligence at this stage in his life compared to what we know, 50 more years into the future with the future episodes. So, but then adding in the context of those future episodes to think, okay, this guy met the 11th Doctor, then went back to the 2nd Doctor to get his intelligence, which obviously they didn't think about back then. So it's just kind of interesting to think of, I guess. Let's see. I did write down the control box, which was interesting that they made in that the longest 20 minutes in existence. So, but that was still interesting. I didn't realize that the microphone and the control box were separate, basically. So,
a lot of times when we're watching movies on the weekends, and it says, like some supervillain says, you have 10 minutes. I will pick up my iPad and I'll hit the timer for 10 minutes. And by the end of the resolution, it's like 18 or 19 minutes. So
yeah,
time does not seem to be compressed on television and in movies.
Yeah, there's a joke in Dragon Ball Z actually where Goku and the villain, they're fighting on this planet that's going to explode, and the villain says, "This planet is going to explode in 5 minutes." And then about 15 episodes later, the planet finally explodes, and they're like all half-hour episodes, so it's like, this was the longest 5 minutes in television history. And then what I actually love is there's people that will go in and they'll take those 15 episodes and they'll speed them up so that they all can happen in 5 minutes, and they'll like put that on YouTube. So, so it was sort of like that, the 20 minutes that lasted a while.
Now, in defense of people who do that, they'll say that like in the HQ room, and then they'll cut to Jamie out in the actual underground tube, and theoretically you could say those two scenes are happening at the same time. They're not consecutive; they are simultaneous. But still, that did seem a very long 20 minutes. Yeah. After all, it lasted over 2 episodes.
Yeah, I mean, when they were like, "Oh, well, you've got 12 minutes left," like 12. I feel like it's already been 20 minutes. So, let's see.
But then, time isn't linear in Doctor Who, is it?
I suppose not. It's, I mean, just going off of, the Great Intelligence meeting 2 different versions of the Doctor at different points. So, yeah. I wrote down Fred. I like that we had, which, I mean, it stands to reason that Fred would have been okay after all of that. I mean, he was clearly the best of the Yetis because he was taking them all down. So
yeah, unfortunately, as soon as he said Fred, I thought, well, you should have called him Freddy. He would be Freddy the Yeti.
Freddy, yeah. I mean, it was kind of, I don't know. I just like stuff like that where it's like, oh, here's this, this thing that's like, this killer and stuff. But then you give it a name, and then it just becomes this friendly little thing. I mean, it kind of like to kind of go back to Godzilla versus Kong. It is kind of like those scenes where it's like, oh yeah, we're just sort of hanging out with Kong, and he's happy. He's friends like with his girl and the the person that watches over her. It's nice. You can kind of relate to Kong a bit. So, which I should just go ahead and ask real quick. Did you like Godzilla versus Kong? No. Did you like any of those movies?
No.
None of them?
No. And I'll tell you that my biggest problem with Godzilla vs. Kong is there's literally no plot. It's a bunch of characters thrown together, but other than, giant lizard, duking it out with giant ape, which I understand, that's the point of the movie.
Yeah.
But still, there should be some serious kind of plot, and there wasn't any, in my opinion. Right. So I mean, yeah, it's for what it is. For people who like that sort of thing, it is the sort of thing that they will like. But no, I now see, here's the thing: Kong Skull Island made more sense because this was the plot. These people are going in to try to find whatever's on Skull Island, and then Kong is trying to kill them, and they're trying not to get killed. That made sense. It had a plot, and it had characters that you could identify with, or root for, or root against.
Yeah.
But last night it was like, okay, so the guy who puts on the helmet to control the other thing, who was he? We didn't see him in any of the previous films, and why should we care about him? So, and that's the thing. Kyle Chandler and Millie Bobby Brown are the only two characters that really carried over from the last film.
Yeah.
But Kyle Chandler did nothing. I mean, if you took every minute that he's in that film and put it end to end, he's probably in that film less than 5 minutes.
Yeah,
and it's like, okay, why did you even bring him back then? That makes no sense. If you're not going to use him, what's he there for? I understand bringing the daughter, Millie Bobby Brown, back because she played literally the only character with a thread in the entire film.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of the MonsterVerse.
Yeah. Because even in King of the Monsters, it was more of a plot. I mean, just them unleashing Ghidorah and then having Godzilla face him and all the others like Rodan and stuff. So, anywho, I just figured we'd talk about that just a little bit to make this discussion just the slightest bit longer.
Oh, but we do have some questions to answer.
Yes, we will. We kind of went over everything else, actually. Because the only other things I wrote down were, Arnold ended up being the traitor. Which, I mean, he's the traitor in that he was the one possessed by the intelligence. Yes. So, I do like that you really can't know how long he was possessed. Was it from the beginning, or was it when he went into that web, So we're really just not sure at that point. So I kind of like that. And then, I'm also trying to figure out the whole thing with the timeline of the Great Intelligence and his, fight with two different doctors.
It is kind of sad that Arnold does not survive. He gets literally burned to a crispy noodle there at the end.
Yeah. I actually just remembered to kind of go back to last episode with Salamander. Apparently there is a comic where Salamander comes back and he faces the third Doctor. So I thought that was pretty interesting. But I don't think he comes back on TV. So
it strikes me that the minute he gets sucked out the door, if one of the other doctors, like the third Doctor, had happened to be passing through there right at that moment and have said, hey, there's something outside, could have pulled him back in before he, died or disappeared. Or I don't know what happens to you when you fall into the, chronosynclastic infundibulum.
Yeah, Gesundheit. No one knows. So,
Kurt Vonnegut, Sirens of Titan, great book.
And then other than that, I mean, I wrote down the climax where the Doctor wanted to destroy the Great Intelligence, but they just sort of locked him away from Earth again, which is interesting. Which I understand that a bit more now. I don't think I understood that the first time around.
Yeah.
So,
we didn't have the previous Abominable Snowman story.
Right.
Snowmen. We do know it is snowmen, plural.
Yes, I think the thumbnails say Abominable Snowman, and I just screwed that up. So, they're actually, speaking of thumbnails, there's an Easter egg on the last episode of the Enemy of the World thumbnail. It's an Easter egg that I think maybe two people will understand.
Am I one of them?
No, actually.
Okay.
So, but yeah, so that episode hasn't gone up yet to YouTube, so I'll be curious if anyone catches that.
Well, I was just wondering because we are taping this on Easter weekend, so I know it's not going to go up for another 2 or 3 weeks.
Yeah.
But putting an Easter egg and then on Easter weekend.
Yeah, that'll go up the day after Easter.
Okay.
So, and it's already up by the time you guys see it. So, anywho. And then the last thing I kind of wrote down was just immediately once everything is resolved, they hightail it back to the TARDIS. So I like that there really isn't any sort of let's briefly talk and then we'll say our goodbyes and everything. It's like no, immediately like let's get out of here. Let's just go.
Let Dr. Travers and Anne explain it to them.
Yeah, good luck with that. So, alrighty. So. Well, maybe we do have slightly more questions here. I can actually zoom this in.
I've never seen that. What does it say? This Saturday, Dad and I will be rewatching The Web of Fear Parts 4 to 6. We want your questions to answer during the discussion.
Yes, that is the tweet I sent out. Now, let's see. So, on first question we have here is actually explain why the Great Intelligence thought invading the London Underground was such a tactically genius move. Again, like I said, this is a reference to the 11th Doctor episode where he just accidentally tells the Great Intelligence that, and then he starts to piece it together. It's like, London Underground, intelligence. Why does this sound familiar? Because he's like thousands of years older, and it's like, something about that sounds familiar, but I don't remember. So
okay. Well, I mean, I always love that. If I had seen any of the New Who, and I've only seen a couple episodes, that would be a lot better. But I love the historical plugins, like when the Doctor accidentally inspires Nero to burn down Rome accidentally, and when Agamemnon and Menelaus can't come up with how to get into Troy, and the Doctor's going, oh my God, these people are never going to come up with it. It's a horse. It's just a horse.
Yeah. Or, later on, the Doctor will accidentally cause Pompeii to happen, so...
Now, I haven't seen that one yet, so...
Right. Well, it'll be a while, so you'll forget about it anyway. Yeah. So... Which is why I've been explaining stuff about, the Great Intelligence and the 11th Doctor. You're going to forget it by the time we get there.
Yeah, like Dr. Sam Beckett, my memory is Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
There's another Easter egg for you.
Yeah. Next question. Are you aware that someone stole the 3rd episode of this story when it was found with the Enemy of the World? So that's why the 3rd episode of The Web of Fear is missing. Someone actually stole it, and it's just gone. Isn't that crazy?
That's very strange.
Why would someone steal it?
Well, I mean, I kind of understand. I mean, it's like the people who hire thieves to take great works of art. That way they can have it in their homes or wherever and say, nobody knows this, but I'm the only person in the world who has the 3rd episode of The Web of Fear from Doctor Who in 1969.
I don't know if that's a great accomplishment.
But again, too, I mean, seriously, why would you steal a priceless piece of art and then not tell anybody about it? I mean, the whole point, it seems to me, is not only do you enjoy the art, but you enjoy being able to tell everybody, hey, I've got a Van Gogh, or I've got a Picasso, or, I've got a Monet. So to steal something and then hide it away makes no sense to me.
Yeah, that is pretty strange. And I also love just any time where it's like, yes, well, this cereal, luckily it was found in a vault in South Africa or something like that. Yeah. It's like, man, they're always in like the last place you would expect, And granted, it's because, like it was sent to that country to air there, and they didn't throw it away, so we got lucky.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I mean... Probably no one's heard this in the last 100 years, but thank God for the British Empire, because, these things were being sent to Australia and New Zealand and Hong Kong and South Africa and Nigeria and places like that, where the BBC was one of the ways that they could watch TV, and that's how these things are being recovered, ultimately.
Yeah. That is one of those weird, like, well, thanks for the British Empire, like... You get one. You get if we have a scoreboard of good and bad, that's at least 1 point for the British Empire.
Well, let's face it, the British Empire also colonized the east coast of North America, and that's why we're here. So that's two. You didn't govern it as well as you might have, but King George III was a troubled man, shall we say?
Yeah. And that's that. That's the Q&A.
That's the total Q&A.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jamie and Patrick.
Yes. Not as many this time around, but that's okay. Again, I suspect that's more because last time we just had general questions about the 2nd Doctor and stuff. And
by the way, Jamie, I love the pronouns he, him, and oi, you!
That is pretty brilliant. But yeah, I guess that's basically it. Now, I think... okay, next up, on Amazon, it says The Wheel in Space. However, I think that might not actually be right. I think we have a full animated episode next called Fury from the Deep. I believe that's actually next, and so I'm just going to have to buy that separately.
Okay.
Thanks, BritBox. You're a real help. In fact, yes, because there is a clear difference of dates between Web of Fear ends at the beginning of March, Wheel in Space begins at the end of April, so that accounts for Fury from the Deep. So I believe that is actually next.
Right, so Fury from the Deep is all recons, or is it animated?
I think it's fully animated.
Oh, good.
So I don't think there's too many. Like, maybe there's one left that's like heavy recon. So we don't have much of them. I'll be curious if any of them are on Amazon, because good news, we would have subtitles. Bad news, we won't have that text scroll like we had, as we saw in the Web of Fear. So, yeah, I don't know. But yeah, that is basically it. Well, we're not going to be doing another rewatch until season 8, because that will be Terror of the Autons.
Oh, okay.
So
yeah, that's the living mannequins.
Yes,
yeah, okay.
And the Master. The first appearance of the Master, I believe.
The Master. Cool.
So, but yeah, I guess that's basically it. With all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. If you want to watch more of our Doctor Who classic reactions, you can click on the playlist, you can subscribe if you haven't done that already, and be sure you hit that notification bell. You can support me on Patreon and follow me on social media, links below in the description. See you guys later.